Hi, welcome to the GT Woodshop and another video in the long-running saga of what the hell am I going to do with all these offcuts. If you haven't seen the previous videos in this series, I'll put a link up and down in the description below to the playlist, the intro, blah blah blah, so on and so forth. In this video, I'm going to use some of these longer offcuts to make a little bent lamination. I've lots of smaller, thinner pieces that would make a chopping board look a little over busy and confusing and potentially unpleasant to the eye. But with a bent lamination, as I'm sure you're aware, you need the pieces to be rather thin. 2mm is kind of a great size actually. So it's a bit of a laborious process, mind-numbingly boring, cutting all the pieces down. But once that's done, the rest of it is quite enjoyable, actually. So I think we need to start, and I always start with bent laminations by getting my former sorted. So I've already cut a piece to wherever the hell it's gone. There it is. To about 3mm, and I'm going to see if I can get that to bend to the shape I want. Now the shape I want is quite specific only because of one of the recipients of this particular project is my sister. And my sister likes nothing better than to lounge in a sun lounger type chair with a spot of gin. Now, not all the family are alcoholics, but we do enjoy a tipple. So I'm going to see if I can rough out the shape of a sun lounger on a piece of scrap MDF, cut it on the bandsaw, and then attempt to bend a piece of 3mm into that shape. Here goes. At this point in time, I really don't know whether I'm going to be able to get the timber to bend on these curves. So that's what I'd really like. A little sort of headresty bit at the top. A nice bit for the bum there and support the back of the knees there. But I think I'm going to flatten that a bit for my first cut. Well, I've just gone to turn the bandsaw on and start the cut, and my blade's broken. So it's the jigsaw for me. And you're probably going to see me struggle cutting this with the jigsaw, as you've seen me struggle in other videos holding things down on my bench, because I have no suitable method of using holdfasts. Well, I'm about to remedy that in an upcoming video. Another reason to subscribe. So that's my first cut made, and I have a piece of 3mm that I've cut down on the bandsaw and then smoothed out on the drum sounder just to see whether I can achieve that curve. And by virtue of the fact that I can press that down with my hands, I think I'm pretty good. The issue with any bent lamination is how thin has the piece got to be able to achieve the shape that you want to achieve. Now, as you can see on this, there's the shape that I wanted to achieve. I don't think I'm going to be able to get there, but I think what I can do is half this so that the side profile will look a bit more like a deck chair and less like a curve or two. So I'm going to do just that, trim out a little bit more there and down there, give it a little sand, and then we'll try clamping that to it just to make sure we're good. So my former's recut and resanded, and I'm quite happy with the shape. Now, I think it's reminiscent of a lounger. Can I say lounger-ish? I will. I did. So now I need to make sure that my 3mm strip will bend to these curves. So, Blue Peter style. Oh, copyright infringement. Let's see if it will. Now you're probably thinking, surely to God, you're not going to try and clamp it up like that. And you'd be right. I'm not going to try and clamp it up like that. I just wanted to make sure that a 3mm piece will follow those curves. So I'm going to cut the pieces now, and then we'll look at making the former proper so that we can actually clamp. Now to cut the pieces, I've got a few options available. I could slice them down on the bandsaw. If I do that, then the bandsaw is going to leave quite a rough cut, and I'm going to need to run each piece through the drum sander to smooth it off, and then I'm going to have to run the piece that I've cut from through the through the drum sander to sand it off, and that's going to be quite time consuming, plus the fact the bandsaw is not the fastest at cutting anyway. So I'm going to use the table saw, and the Incra system is going to make life simplicity itself for doing this because of the scale that's on it, the lead screw system that they use. All I've got to do is start from a known number and then subtract each time the width of the piece I want cut off plus the width of the blade curve. So I'm 3mm, so if I drop 6mm each time, I get a 3mm piece. Fantastic. Thank you, Incra. Let's have at it, as the saying goes. Well, as you can see, I've cut a myriad of coloured timber into 3mm strips so that I can create a visual masterpiece. I've also cut an extra piece of MDF, just roughed out oversized with the jigsaw. I'm going to stick the two pieces together with some double-sided tape, and then with flush trim bit in my router table, I'll route the second piece to exactly the same profile as the first, and then we can get to setting out for our clamps. With my second former piece cut and both pieces glued together, I can now look at where I need to place the clamps. And as you can see by what I've rigged up so far, I'm going to need to make sure the face of the clamp, the head of the clamp, is firmly on the piece, and the base part of the clamp has got plenty of purchase at the bottom. So I either need to cut parallel slots into the back of the template, or I'm going to need to cut little triangles, and I'm just going to go with whichever one's easiest for me to achieve. I'm also going to need to make sure that as I clamp one piece, another bit doesn't let go from the template, and you can see there that that piece does. So I'll work my way around the template, placing the clamps, cutting the little notches, and I'll see you back in a tick. Well, my clamp preparation is complete. And as you can see, I've decided to go with cutting tiny little pieces of MDF and drilling and screwing them into place so that I can get the clamp pressure and the back end of the clamp exactly where I want it to pull my 3mm pieces right into the former. So the next issue we need to overcome is how many pieces can we glue up at one time before the timber cracks or the clamp fails, or even worse, the timber starts to lift at the edge, which is a common problem. So I've done some testing off camera, I'm sure you'll appreciate that, and I've come to the conclusion that 6 pieces is about the max that I can clamp at any one time without the corners lifting or the whole project deforming. So before I get the glue out, I'm going to get some machine wax and cover the former itself and the back of this piece of scrap worktop that I've got with some machine wax so that my project won't stick to the board. And then it'll be time to start what will be many glue ups before we get enough width to make it into a usable piece. Two days and half a dozen glue ups later, and I'm ready to take the clamps off. As you can see, I ended up needing far more than I did to begin with, and stronger clamps as well. So let's take the clamps off and find out whether my idea with machine waxing the base worked. Here goes. I'd say that worked fairly well. Success. Initially, it appears to have all bonded or followed the profile fairly well, but I've got quite a bit of cleanup to do to get rid of all of this glue. So I'll knock off the worst of the spots with the scraper, and then we'll run it through the planer. I've said it before, self-praise is no praise. But that's come out rather well. And from a chair-like perspective, use your imagination. Not too bad. So, if it's a chair, that piece would be level. There's the recliner. Yeah, with me? So this needs to be perpendicular to that, as does this. Therefore, cutting the ends square was always going to pose some potential problems, but the micro jig Matchfit DoveTail Jig has come into its own again. If you haven't seen the video for this, I'll pop a link to it above. Fantastic system. I'm sanded to 320 all round and ready to choose the hardware. Now I ordered a few different types that I found on Amazon. I saw these, the old-fashioned screw-in type, which I quite like. And then I found these, which are quite lovely. And then I saw these, like a miniature old-fashioned coat hook. And I think they will be perfect. So that's that decision made. Next, how many and where? Because of the curves and the nature of the recipient, I'd like to go a little bit random looking. No particular order. Because that's her persona. What do we think of that? That would irritate the living daylights out of me, which means she's probably going to like it. So naturally I need to make sure that they are parallel with the ends. So I'm going to use my Okay, so all my marks are marked and I'm ready to drill and screw. So I'm going to center punch each one to make sure I get it on the line, even though it's random. Well, it's semi-random. My OCD kicked in a bit, so I'm following that dark wood for the top line, that dark wood for the middle, and this dark wood for the bottom. And it's appeased me somewhat. And now for the finish. I've considered Danish oil, which I like. Looks beautiful, smells beautiful. And I've considered yacht and teak oil, which I've got, which is absolutely beautiful as well. Or I could go with a polyurethane or a lacquer, or I could go with mineral oil and beeswax. I know, potentially controversial, but the decision's been made. And I think it's going to look beautiful. It'll be seasoned, protected, a family heirloom, I hear you say. Oh, yes. And I was right. Do you know, in my opinion, I'm always right. Hope my wife didn't hear that. Look at that. A thing of beauty. And here I am with the finished item, complete with hardware, diligently fashioned in antique brass, sitting astride the most beautiful hardwood lamination. I do hope you like it, Perkins. Now, I fully realise it's not the Welsh dresser you were hoping for, but I think it's the next best thing. A lounger-esque key holder for your new house. Happy birthday, sis. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Ta-ra.